Daddy always buys me candies. I couldn't believe my kind husband, who cares so much for our daughter, would do something like this. At this point, I was still unaware of the true meaning behind his overtime work. My name is Natalie Thompson. I am 36 years old. My husband, Ken, and I have been married for 6 years and we have a 4-year-old daughter. I am a mother, but also a surgeon. I have been busy with my work since we got married. Ken, aware of my busy schedule, said, "Let's work through this together." And so, we got married. Later on, we were able to have a child. I went back to work shortly after our daughter was born. I wanted to watch our daughter grow a little more, but my job was so demanding that I couldn't take much time off. Despite my busy days, I don't think I've neglected my daughter, and I believe I've given her plenty of love. I think Ken is very supportive when it comes to parenting. He makes time to play with our daughter, and even when I'm not around, he can almost perfectly handle bathing her and getting her dressed. Our 4-year-old daughter loves her dad. Ken has his own job and it must be tough for him, but since our daughter was born, he has been very considerate of my busy work schedule. I have some late nights at work. Even when I'm home, I often have to work. Still, Ken always tells me, "Don't overdo it. I'll take care of our daughter." I took comfort in Ken's words. But I didn't know yet. I couldn't believe that my kind husband was doing something like this. Our daughter attends daycare, and I usually drop her off in the morning, while Ken, who has a more flexible schedule, picks her up. Since she has been going to daycare since she was a baby, she has many friends. She even says she wants to go to daycare on her days off. She enjoys it that much. What I looked forward to the most each day was hearing stories about my daughter's day at daycare after I got home from work. She would tell me stories about playing with her friends at daycare, like building sandcastles or racing to the park. And she would always talk about her time with Ken as well. "Today, Daddy and I went shopping for dinner." She always seemed so happy when she talked about it, which made me feel warm inside. I couldn't be more thankful to Ken, who was doing such a great job with our daughter. I had never heard Ken mention having to work overtime before. His company, being relatively large, seemed to encourage employees to leave work on time. So, Ken rarely came home late. But one day, he texted me saying he had to work late and asked if I could pick up our daughter. Fortunately, I was able to arrange my schedule that day and picked her up instead of Ken. Until then, Ken had always been the one to pick her up because of his flexible schedule, so I hadn't heard him mention overtime work before. I thought maybe he had been managing to adjust his schedule all this time, even when it was difficult. At the time, I didn't think much of it. When Ken came home, I asked him, "Have you been adjusting your schedule to pick up our daughter even when you're busy?" After a brief pause, he replied, "It's been a bit busier lately." Ken has a managerial position, so he has a lot of responsibilities. I told him, "If I can arrange my schedule, I'll pick her up, so let me know if you're having a tough time." My husband just said thank you and played with our daughter. After telling him this, he gradually started asking me to pick up our daughter more frequently. I thought it was unavoidable due to work, so I explained the situation to my workplace, arranged time to pick up my daughter, and asked my mother at home to help until I finished work. This went on for 2 months. Eventually, I couldn't take time off every time, so I asked my husband if there was any other way. He then said, "I have a position too, I can't keep saying that. Taking care of the child is a mother's job, right?" I was surprised because he had never said anything like that before. I wondered what had suddenly happened. I thought he might have become harsh due to stress and busyness. However, this incident changed my husband's attitude towards me. Until now, he used to help with household chores and child-rearing when I was busy with work, but he stopped doing anything at all. He became busier and couldn't manage everything. I thought I should do whatever I could. However, there were times when I couldn't handle all the housework. Even when I asked for help, he recently started saying, "It's because you prioritize your work." I understood that. But the fact is, I can't neglect my work when I have patients. He should understand that since he married me, so why suddenly say such a thing? I had one guess. It was that my husband had often tried to talk to me at night. I had been saying I was busy with work or had work left. Admittedly, my husband hasn't been a priority lately. I'm busy, and since our daughter was born, I haven't felt that way. If I have time for my husband, I'd rather rest, to be honest. I hadn't realized that this was the reason I was coming home late. Lately, my husband often said he would be late because he was busy at work. I thought it was unusual after so many years, but I couldn't say anything because I had relied on him too much. However, we have a daughter, so we have no choice but to cooperate. I told my husband that I didn't need him to pick up our daughter every time, but I wanted him to make time somehow. After thinking for a while, he reluctantly agreed. Since then, I haven't heard him say he's working overtime as much. He's been picking up our daughter properly. I felt bad for putting all the burden on my husband, so I told him to adjust within his limits. He just said he understood. However, his attitude towards me remained the same. I wondered why my husband's attitude had changed, but it didn't take long to find out. One day, I was able to finish work earlier than usual. That day, there was no message from my husband saying he would be late due to overtime, so I was a little excited to spend time with my family. My husband usually buys ready-made meals or quickly prepares food. I always rely on my husband, so I decided to cook homemade food after a long time. I wanted to make a lot of their favorite dishes. I was desperately thinking about the menu on my way home. It was time for my daughter and husband to come home, so I finished shopping for dinner and hurried home. Today, I can get home early and listen to my daughter's stories slowly. My daughter, who always wants to help, will probably want to cook together. I was excited. After my daughter went to bed, I thought about having a drink with my husband. I opened the front door with such thoughts. I checked if my daughter and husband had come home. But I felt something was wrong. For some reason, the shoes were arranged differently than usual. I thought my daughter had lined up the shoes I had forgotten to put away. I cautiously looked at the shoes in the entrance again and saw my daughter's and husband's familiar shoes. So far, everything was normal. But there was also a pair of shoes with a design that young girls would like. Why are these shoes at our house? Before I could understand what was happening, I hurried into the house and went to the living room. When I quietly opened the living room door, my daughter was eating snacks and watching TV alone. Welcome back, Mom. You're early today. What's going on? My daughter was watching TV alone as if it were a regular thing. I asked my daughter without understanding the situation. I'm home. I saw Daddy's shoes, but where is Daddy? Daddy is working with someone from his office in the room upstairs, so wait by watching TV. Hearing that, I got goosebumps. From the shoes at the entrance and my daughter's words, I could somehow sense what was happening. No, but it's impossible. Would my husband, who cares about our daughter, do such a thing? I went upstairs, trying not to think too much and holding my breath. And then, I confirmed that there was some noise coming from a room. I hesitated for a moment, but then I forcefully opened the door of that room. My head went blank, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. There, I saw a sight I didn't even want to imagine, my husband and another woman. Hey! Natalie, what are you doing here? It's not what are you doing here, is it? What are you doing in our bedroom? Who is that woman? And what do you mean by leaving our daughter alone in the living room? I couldn't stop talking. Just get dressed quickly and explain. My hand trembling with anger as I closed the door. Leaving our 4-year-old daughter alone in the living room, what was this man thinking? Moreover, bringing a woman into our house and into the bed where our whole family sleeps. After a while, when I opened the door, the two were sitting side by side, dressed. What does this mean? I asked, pretending to be calm. Well, this is... At first, my husband, Ken, tried to make an excuse, but then the woman beside him whispered. "Is that your wife?" And he suddenly said to me, "It's because you're always working and never paying attention to me. This is your own fault." That's right. Poor Ken. Well, it seems like he doesn't see you as a woman anymore, old lady. That's right. Now that you understand, get out quickly. What is he talking about? While thinking that in the back of my mind, I was already running down the stairs before he finished talking. I wanted to retort more, but I was not in the mood due to anger and sadness. I just wanted to get away from there as quickly as possible. Then, while eating snacks and sitting cutely watching TV, I told my daughter, "Let's go out." My daughter asked without hesitation, "Where's Daddy?" "Daddy is busy with work." It was hard to explain to my daughter, and I held back my tears of anger and headed for my parents' house. In the car, I asked my daughter, "Has Daddy ever said he was working with a woman at home after picking you up from daycare?" "Yes. He said it was important work, so I had to watch TV quietly. And, don't tell Mommy. If you can keep it a secret, you can eat snacks. Amy and Daddy always bought me lots of snacks." "I'm sorry, Mommy." My daughter called the woman Amy. "Do you know the name of the lady?" My daughter was a quick learner. She remembered the woman's name and told me. I felt guilty and angry at my daughter's innocent words, and the tears I had been holding back came out. My husband, who had bribed a small child with snacks to keep quiet and brought a woman into our home several times while leaving her alone in the room, was unforgivable. And I started thinking about how to get back at those two. And decided to consult someone. When I have a problem, there is always one person I consult first. It was my boss at work. This boss introduced us and knows my husband's company well. He has been a trustworthy person who has listened to my problems sincerely since I started working. I told my boss about what happened and the woman's name. My boss listened seriously but didn't say much, just listened to my story. And then he went back to work. A week later, I was called by my boss. I thought it was about the consultation. My boss had secretly investigated. It turned out that the woman my husband was having an affair with was a student working part-time at my husband's company. I became very sad when a student stole my husband, but the thought of my husband being smitten with that student gave me goosebumps. I was introduced to someone by my boss, whom I had consulted. It turned out to be the hospital director, whom I also knew. I was wondering why the director was introduced to me, when my boss said, "Actually, I was consulted by the director as well. It seems that his daughter is not going to school much, and he's wondering what to do. It's surprising that she is not only skipping school but also having an affair." My boss seemed to be surprised as well. It turned out that the daughter, whom the director had consulted about, was the woman with whom my husband was having an affair. I thought the world was a small place. According to my boss, the woman my husband was having an affair with is a medical student aiming to become a doctor. I wondered why she was working part-time at my husband's company, which is not related to medicine. However, it didn't take long to find out. I decided to lay in wait near my husband's office. I was surprised that I was trying to meet the woman my husband was having an affair with, but I had no intention of backing down. Then, the woman appeared. When she noticed me, she said, "Eh? What, a middle-aged woman laying in wait? Scary. She can say whatever she wants. Today, you are not with my husband, are you?" The woman laughed snidely and said with a composed expression, "I'm not with him every day. But sorry for stealing your high-income husband, old lady." While thinking that I earn more than my husband, I continued, "I heard you are a medical student. Why are you working part-time at my husband's company, which has nothing to do with being a doctor?" The woman, looking shocked, glared at me as if to say, "You've researched that much?" Ken kept saying he wanted me near him. He was persistent, but Ken buys me anything. It's nice to have a high-income boyfriend. The woman seemed to consider my husband as nothing more than a cash cow. I felt a bit sorry for my husband, who didn't know he was thought of in that way, but that didn't matter anymore. If you are aiming to be a doctor, shouldn't you be going to school and studying properly? Why do I have to be told what to do by an old lady like you? Can you stop picking on me just because your husband was stolen? It's my business, isn't it? When I told her that her father was worried about her, the woman's face started to turn pale. Why are you bringing up my father? Don't say careless things without knowing anything. I made a call to someone on the spot. And within a minute, the director appeared. As soon as the director saw me, he apologized, saying, "I am truly sorry for my daughter." The woman, who didn't understand why her father was there, was flustered. I heard everything. What are you doing, not going to school and playing with someone else's husband? What's fun about that? The woman's father, the director, seemed to be a very strict person, and she seemed unable to talk back. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was married. She was desperately trying to make excuses even at this point, but the director had heard the entire conversation between us. Whether he was married or not, what you are doing is pathetic, and there was no excuse that would work. Afterwards, the woman, who couldn't say anything to her father, was taken home by the director. I had planned this day with the director immediately after my boss introduced us. When I told the director about my husband, he held his head in his hands, saying, "I can't believe my daughter is doing such a pathetic thing." And then he said, "I will scold my daughter properly, so please demand compensation or anything you need." I once thought that it would be unreasonable to demand compensation from a student, but considering the director's feelings, I decided to demand it properly. I returned home after a month. It seems that my husband is feeling down, maybe because he lost contact with the woman he was having an affair with. During this month, he did not apologize to me at all, only contacted me about our daughter. He probably thought I would come back eventually and waited carelessly. I have been preparing for divorce this past month. I am also considering taking a significant amount of money from both of them. Of course, I will make my husband pay child support. I placed the business card of my divorce lawyer and a settlement document regarding child support and property division in front of my husband. I remember reading somewhere that it's good to prepare a settlement document to make sure you get paid properly. It said that if you do not get paid, you can take legal action. I have lost trust in my husband due to this incident, and I thought of getting revenge by being thorough. I consulted with my lawyer multiple times and created the settlement document. When my husband saw the business card and settlement document, he quickly said, "I don't want a divorce." He insisted he only met the woman once, but I told him our daughter said she had been coming and going from our house multiple times and had even bribed her with candy. Do you believe what a 4-year-old child says more than me? That's impossible. I trust Mindy more than you. I won't forgive you for belittling Mindy just because she's a child. It seemed my husband was angry that I believed our daughter more than him. No matter what I said, he insisted it was only once, so I presented a recording I secretly made when he met the woman. You met Amy behind my back and even recorded it? I didn't know you had the courage to do such a thing. He seemed to be belittling me. And he was confident that the woman wouldn't say anything bad about him. However, when he heard the woman referring to him as a cash cow, he was shocked. He was in love with her. Unable to make excuses, my husband bowed his head in silence. I said firmly, "I don't want to waste any more time on you, so sign the settlement document quickly." Reluctantly, he signed the document. Later, I visited my boss who had advised me and reported the situation, expressing my gratitude. My boss told me that when I mentioned the woman's name, he recognized it and immediately understood the situation. Thanks to my boss, I was able to get a divorce. Afterward, the divorce was finalized. I demanded money from both my husband and the woman he had an affair with. I got custody of our daughter. My husband, who loves our daughter despite what he did, begged me to let him see her until the end. But I firmly refused, not wanting my daughter to see a man who had a relationship with another woman while leaving her behind. My husband was disheartened, but he couldn't afford to be down because he had to work hard to pay child support. It seems that the woman was scolded severely by her father after that. Her father found out she was neglecting school and getting involved with men and told her, "Can someone like you handle a job where you are responsible for people's lives? If you are serious, retake the entrance exam." He also told her to drop out and repay the tuition. It seems the woman is working hard to earn money to pay back her father for the tuition and my consolation money. As for me, I am still busy, but I make sure to spend quality time with my daughter, and I feel fulfilled.